The rain fell in relentless sheets as thunder rolled across the battlefield, drowning out the cries of the dying. General Marcus stood tall upon the ramparts, his eyes fixed on the horizon where enemy torches glowed like a sea of fire. The narrator whispered that he had been called invincible, yet tonight his trembling hand betrayed his fear. Captain Elias said, "The men are faltering, General. They fear the end is upon us." Marcus pressed his palm against the cold stone, his jaw clenched, and replied, "History will not remember the fear in their eyes. It will remember how we faced it." Nearby, Anna darted through mud with a bloodied scroll, her voice breaking as she cried, "General, the enemy surrounds us." Marcus's gaze hardened, for he knew this night would test the very soul of his command. The narrator spoke of silence broken only by the hiss of rain, striking embers as the fortress walls groaned under pressure. Captain Elias said, "The eastern flank has collapsed, General. We cannot hold them much longer." Marcus's breath hung heavy in the night, and he replied, "Then we fight for every stone, for every soul." Soldiers clung to broken spears, eyes hollow, their whispers drowned by distant drums. Anna shivered near the barracks, clutching the scroll to her chest, whispering to herself, "If I fall, the truth falls with me." The storm was no longer just weather, but a cruel herald of death, wrapping the fortress in dread. The narrator revealed how fear moved like a contagion, infecting even the bravest hearts. Elias said, "Some men speak of surrender, Marcus. They see no victory here." Marcus turned slowly, his face a mask of steel, and answered, "Victory is not survival. Elias, victory is defiance." In the courtyard, the injured soldier whispered his prayer louder, his voice cracking as others joined in trembling harmony. Anna stared at them, eyes wide, realizing the burden of survival rested on fragile hope. The fortress trembled not from siege weapons but from the weight of despair pressing inward. The narrator described how Marcus walked through the wounded, each step echoing his silent vow. He knelt beside a dying soldier who whispered, "General, will history forget us?" Marcus held the man's trembling hand, answering, "History forgets names, not courage." Elias turned away, his jaw tight, unable to mask his doubt. Anna, clutching the parchment, said softly, "I will not forget." The storm's thunder roared, drowning her words, yet Marcus heard them, and his heart steeled with new fire. The narrator said the storm seemed to pause as Marcus ascended the battlements, again lightning, revealing the sea of enemies below. Elias said, "They will breach before dawn." Marcus's gaze did not waver, and he replied, "Then dawn shall rise on our defiance." Soldiers behind him lifted their battered swords, echoing his resolve in ragged voices. Anna pressed the scroll to her chest, tears mixing with rain, whispering, "This night must be remembered." The fortress groaned like a living beast awaiting its death, but within its broken walls hearts burned brighter than any flame. The narrator revealed that dawn was still distant, yet Marcus felt the night stretching endlessly, each heartbeat a drum of war. Anna sat by the barracks fire, trembling, whispering prayers she barely believed in. Captain Elias approached Marcus with narrowed eyes and said, "The men no longer see hope. They cling to you, General, as their last flame." Marcus steadied his breath, staring into the storm, and replied, "Then I must burn brighter than the fear around them." The fortress groaned under the wind, timbers splitting as if the stones themselves resisted despair. Anna glanced at Marcus, her lips parting as though to speak, but silence claimed her words. The narrator told us that in her silence was the seed of memory, a vow that she alone carried. The narrator described how soldiers huddled together in corners of the courtyard, their eyes hollow, their hands clutching rusted blades that would not survive another clash. Elias said, "They are ready to flee at the first breach." Marcus answered coldly, "Then bind them with duty, not chains." He turned toward Anna and added, "You carry words stronger than steel. Guard them well." Anna's fingers tightened on the scroll, and she whispered, "If I falter, then truth dies in darkness." The storm answered with a roar of thunder, drowning her fragile words. Yet Marcus heard them, and his chest swelled with both pride and sorrow. The narrator reminded us that these fragile moments bound their fate tighter than iron. The narrator told us Marcus walked through the lines, placing his hand on weary shoulders, his presence steadying men who had already accepted death. Elias said, "They follow you because they fear what lies beyond, not because they believe." Marcus replied, "Belief is born in fire, Elias, watch it kindle." A soldier coughed blood at Marcus' feet and whispered, "General, if we fall, carry us into history." Marcus bent down, pressing his hand to the soldier's chest, and answered, "Your courage carries itself." Anna watched in silence, tears mixing with the rain, her hand pressed against the scroll like a shield of paper against the storm. The fortress breathed with the voices of the broken, yet their breath became his strength. The narrator revealed how Marcus returned to the ramparts, lightning burning the sky like jagged scars. Elias joined him, his jaw clenched, and said, "You cannot shield them from truth. They will die before dawn." Marcus's voice was steel as he replied, "They will die with defiance in their hearts, not fear." Anna climbed the slick stones behind them, her cloak heavy with rain. She said softly, "If the walls fall, I will carry your words beyond them." Marcus turned briefly, his eyes locking with hers, the weight of unspoken trust binding them. The storm pressed against them, and the fortress itself seemed to breathe in rhythm with their defiance. The narrator said the storm eased for a fleeting moment, leaving silence heavy as ash. Marcus raised his head, his voice carrying across the courtyard, "We do not fight for life, we fight for memory, for those who will come after us." Soldiers lifted their weary faces, embers of hope flickering in hollow eyes. Elias turned to Anna and muttered, "He binds them with words while I counted only their wounds." Anna whispered, "Words can bind stronger than chains." The fortress trembled as though listening, and for the first time, the men straightened their spines. The narrator declared that in that moment, courage returned, fragile yet alive. The narrator said that whispers of betrayal moved like shadows across the fortress, heavier than the storm outside. Captain Elias leaned close to Marcus and murmured, "There are voices among us, General, that do not belong to our cause." Marcus's jaw tightened as he replied, "Then we shall see who stands when steel meets flesh." Anna listened nearby, her hands clutching the scroll, her wide eyes betraying both fear and suspicion. Soldiers muttered in corners, their voices carrying rumors of treachery like sparks on dry straw. The narrator revealed that the true enemy was no longer just outside the gates, but within the very stones of the fortress. Marcus felt the weight of eyes watching him, waiting for his fall. The narrator told us that in the dim barracks, a soldier spoke words too sharp for loyalty. His voice trembled as he said, "We die for his pride, not for our land." Elias's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward, but Marcus raised a hand to stop him. Marcus said firmly, "Let him speak. Fear has its tongue, but courage has its answer." The soldier faltered, his eyes dropping to the ground, and silence spread like a chain reaction. Anna's heart raced, her mind wondering who among them carried secrets that might undo them all. The storm rattled the windows, as if echoing the unease that now rooted deeper than the enemy outside. The narrator revealed how Marcus gathered his captains, their armor dented, their faces drawn thin by hunger and doubt. Elias said, "There is a traitor here, and he waits for the walls to fall." Marcus's gaze swept across the men, his voice low but cutting. "Then let him hear this. Treachery shall not break us, for we stand as one, or we die as one." The captains exchanged wary glances, each wondering if trust could still bind them. Anna lingered in the shadows, clutching the scroll so tightly her knuckles whitened. The fortress groaned above, as if straining to hold together not just stone, but loyalty itself. The narrator spoke of night, turning colder, silence heavier, as Marcus stood alone in his chamber. Elias entered, his face pale, and said, "One of our own passed word to the enemy. The breach came from within." Marcus's eyes burned with anger as he replied, "Then betrayal has sharper teeth than any blade." Anna appeared at the door, her breath ragged, whispering, "General, I saw a man slip beyond the wall. He carried no weapon, only a signal torch." The room thickened with dread. the storm outside pounding like a traitor's heartbeat. Trust had been broken, and the fortress no longer felt like home. The narrator told us Marcus strode to the ramparts, the storm raging harder, his soldiers gathering in uneasy silence. Elias said, "The enemy knows our weakness now. We must strike before dawn or perish." Marcus lifted his sword skyward, lightning flashing along its blade, and roared, "Then we shall strike not as prey but as fire." Anna pressed the scroll against her chest, whispering, "If this night ends in ashes, the truth must still live." Soldiers echoed Marcus's cry, though fear lingered behind their voices. The narrator declared that the fortress was no longer merely a wall of stone, but a crucible where loyalty and treachery would be burned into history. The narrator revealed that suspicion spread like wildfire, and every soldier's glance felt heavier than a blade. Elias approached Marcus with urgency, saying, "The traitor stands among us, General." The men whisper of shadows at their backs. Marcus answered coldly, "Then let them whisper until the shadow shows its face." Anna stepped forward, trembling, her voice low as she said, "I saw him, General. He was one of ours. He carried a signal torch to the ridge." Elias's eyes widened, rage battling doubt. The narrator declared that the fortress, once bound by loyalty, now cracked under secrets, and the storm outside seemed to roar in agreement. The narrator spoke of tension snapping like a bowstring as Marcus gathered the soldiers in the courtyard. He raised his voice, declaring, "A traitor hides among you, one who bleeds this fortress from within." Murmurs erupted, fear sharpening into suspicion. Elias scanned the ranks with narrowed eyes, his hand resting on his blade. Anna held the scroll tighter, her breath shallow, as though she carried more than words. A soldier stepped forward, stammering, "I saw Captain Elias speaking in secret, when no eyes were near." The courtyard fell into silence, the storm pausing as though listening. Marcus's eyes locked on Elias, and the first crack of betrayal cut deep. The narrator told us that Elias's face hardened, his voice sharp as he shouted, "Lies! Do you think I would betray the walls I swore to defend?" Marcus studied him with eyes that betrayed neither trust nor disbelief. Anna whispered, "The truth hides behind silence, General." Another soldier spat, "We saw torches on the ridge. Someone guides them." The air crackled with thunder as steel hissed from scabbards, and suspicion became a living beast. Marcus raised his hand, his voice cutting through chaos. "Enough. This fortress will not be torn apart from within before the enemy breaches the walls." But in his heart, doubt grew heavier. The narrator revealed that in the chaos, Anna stepped forward, her voice stronger than before. She said, "I was sent to deliver truth, but truth is a burden. The scroll I carry is not just a message, it is a record. Names of men who traded loyalty for survival." The soldiers gasped, and Elias's face twisted with both fear and fury. Marcus's eyes sharpened as he asked, "And whose names stain its parchment?" Anna lowered her head, whispering, "One among you commands in daylight, but kneels to the enemy by night." The narrator declared that revelation hung like thunder waiting to strike. The narrator said the storm reached its peak as Marcus opened the scroll, his eyes scanning names that bled like wounds. He whispered, "So it is true. Betrayal does not wear an enemy's face but our own." Elias stepped forward, his voice trembling. "I swore no allegiance but here. If my name lies there, then ink has betrayed me." Anna watched, her lips trembling, whispering, "The truth destroys as surely as the sword." Soldiers gripped their weapons, some with eyes of rage, others with eyes of despair. The narrator declared that the fortress was no longer fighting a single war, but two, one against the storm outside, and one against betrayal within. The narrator revealed that the fortress stood on the edge of collapse, yet Marcus walked the ramparts as if carved from stone. Elias said, "Every man watches the gates, but every man also doubts his brother." Marcus answered, "Doubt is poison, but unity is fire. We burn brighter together." Anna followed close behind, clutching the scroll, her eyes wide with dread as she whispered, "If betrayal breaks us, then truth must hold us." The storm subsided into a deadly calm, as though the night itself waited for the moment of fracture. The narrator declared that Marcus's resolve held them together, even as cracks widened beneath their feet. The narrator told us that Marcus called his captains to the great hall, torches flickering against cracked stone walls. He said, "At dawn, we strike first, not as prey but as fire. We deny them the luxury of waiting." Elias frowned and muttered, "The men are weary, General. We may shatter before the enemy does." Marcus turned sharply, replying, "Then better to shatter in defiance than rot in fear." Anna clutched the scroll tighter, whispering, "If your words fail, then history will fail with them." The hall echoed with silence, broken only by the storm's fading rumble, as though fate itself listened. The narrator spoke of soldiers preparing in silence, binding torn cloth over wounds, sharpening blades too dull for battle. Elias moved among them, saying, "The dawn will demand your blood, but it must not take your will." Marcus stood nearby, adding, "Each strike you make is not for victory, but for memory. Let history echo your defiance." Anna watched, her breath shallow, and whispered, "How can memory endure when bodies fall?" Marcus placed his hand gently on her shoulder and said, "Because words outlast bones." The narrator told us their fear remained, yet courage now walked alongside it like a twin flame. The narrator described how Marcus and Elias stood again upon the battlements, gazing out at the enemy torches, glowing like an ocean of fire. Elias whispered, "They are endless, General. No dawn will favor us." Marcus's voice was unshaken as he replied, "Then dawn shall remember we stood, even if none survived to see it." Anna stood between them, her cloak torn, whispering, "Your words carry more weight than stone." The storm began to break, stars peeking through the clouded sky as if heaven itself dared to watch. The narrator told us the air thickened with inevitability, heavy as the breath before a final cry. The narrator revealed that Marcus raised his sword high before the gathered men, the blade gleaming faintly beneath stormlight. He shouted, "At dawn, we do not wait for death. We run to meet it, with defiance in our hearts." Elias's lips parted, then closed, as though even doubt had lost its voice. Soldiers lifted their battered weapons, voices trembling yet unified in a ragged cheer. Anna pressed the scroll against her chest and whispered, "I will remember, even if no one else can." The narrator declared that this vow, fragile as it was, bound the fortress in final defiance as the night thinned toward dawn. The narrator revealed that dawn broke with no warmth, only fire and steel. The enemy roared across the fields, their torches extinguished by rain, leaving shadows more terrifying than light. Marcus raised his sword high, his voice booming, "Now we strike, not as the dying, but as the defiant." Elias shouted, "Shields high, hold the line." Soldiers clashed steel against steel, their cries a thunder greater than the storm. Anna stood behind the battlements, whispering to herself, "Remember this, remember everything," her trembling hands pressing the scroll tight. The narrator declared that the fortress no longer resisted death. It embraced it with fury. The narrator described how the first wave struck the gates like thunder, wood splintering under relentless force. Marcus roared, "Hold fast. Every stone is worth a life." Elias braced his shield, pushing against the enemy's surge, sweat and rain mixing across his face. Soldiers screamed in defiance, though fear burned behind their eyes. Anna covered her ears as the sound of iron and flesh tore the air, whispering, "Do not forget, do not forget." The narrator told us the fortress shook not only from the assault, but from the will of men who refused to bow. The narrator revealed Marcus leapt from the battlements into the melee, his blade cutting a path through the chaos. Elias followed with a roar, striking fiercely, his eyes locked on Marcus as if the two were bound by fire. A soldier cried, "The general fights with us," and courage surged like a wave. Anna leaned over the battlements, tears mixing with rain, shouting, "Do not fall, General." Marcus answered only with steel, each strike ringing like a vow. The narrator declared that in that moment, Marcus was no longer a man, but a storm wielding flesh and iron. The narrator told us blood slicked the stones as the enemy pressed harder, bodies falling like leaves in a storm. Elias shouted, "They push us back!" Marcus, his armor scarred and bloodied, replied, "Then let us push until we break." Soldiers locked shields, their roars echoing through the rain. Anna crouched near the wall, writing hurriedly onto the parchment with trembling hands, whispering, "If their voices fall, their words must live." The narrator revealed that in the clash of iron, history was not written by victors, but by the defiant who refused silence. The narrator declared that the storm's fury matched the carnage below, lightning splitting the sky as Marcus fought surrounded by enemies. Elias carved through the press, shouting, "To the general!" Soldiers surged to his side, battered yet unbroken. Marcus lifted his sword one last time, roaring, "We are not shadows. We are fire." Anna pressed the scroll to her chest, whispering, "Your fire will live, even when you fall." The narrator told us that this moment, filled with blood and flame, was not merely battle. It was the heartbeat of defiance echoing into eternity. The narrator revealed that silence fell heavy after the storm of battle, broken only by the groans of the dying. Marcus knelt among the fallen, his sword buried in the ground, his breath ragged. Elias staggered toward him, blood running down his arm, and whispered, "General, the fortress cannot stand, yet you still stand." Marcus answered faintly, "I stand because they must see I did not fall first." Anna approached slowly, scroll pressed to her chest, whispering, "I will carry your fire beyond these walls." The narrator told us that in her trembling voice, hope found its last breath. The narrator described Marcus rising slowly, his armor broken, his face pale but his gaze unwavering. Elias said, "You gave them more than command. You gave them a reason to fall with dignity." Marcus replied, "Dignity is all a man can claim when death is certain." Anna stepped closer, tears in her eyes, whispering, "Your words are carved into this scroll. They will not be forgotten." Soldiers nearby bowed their heads, some in prayer, others in grief. The narrator declared that though the fortress walls crumbled, its spirit remained, carried in memory, not stone. The narrator told us that Marcus placed his hand on Elias's shoulder, his strength faltering yet his voice firm. He said, "You must lead what remains, for fire does not die when one flame falls." Elias shook his head, whispering, "Without you, they are lost." Marcus's lips curved into a faint smile as he replied, "Then teach them to carry me, not follow me." Anna stepped forward, her voice trembling as she said, "I will keep your name alive, General." The narrator declared that names etched in words endure, longer than walls carved in stone. The narrator revealed that Marcus turned toward the horizon, the rising sun cutting through broken clouds. His body trembled, blood streaking his face, yet his voice carried clear. He said, "History does not ask if we won, but if we defied." Elias lowered his head, whispering, "You gave them defiance, Marcus. You gave them fire." Anna held the scroll high, whispering, "This fire will live." The narrator declared that though the fortress would soon fall into ashes, the moment had already been sealed into eternity. The narrator said, Marcus finally sank to his knees, his sword slipping from his grasp, his eyes still fixed on the horizon. Elias caught him, shouting, "General!" Marcus whispered, "Do not mourn me. Carry me in your memory." Anna dropped beside them, pressing the scroll to his chest, tears mixing with blood and rain. She whispered, "Your fire is mine now." Marcus's eyes closed with a faint smile, and the fortress groaned one final time. The narrator declared that silence returned, yet it was not emptiness, it was remembrance, echoing louder than the storm that once raged.